What's going on, everyone? So the San Antonio Spurs in the draft got Dylan Harper, the transcending, generational talent that is very likely going to be the franchise cornerstone alongside Victor Wembanyama. Right? They also got Carter Bryant, which I am probably equally as excited for. One, because he was a huge position of need, can play either forward spot with his size and length and athleticism, but gives you a legit. I mean, he could start as soon as this year, right? And gives you like a real positional need solved, right? But what else does Spurs need? How else should they approach this upcoming offseason, right? Going into free agency, it's right around the corner. Trades can happen, all that stuff. Now, there are still talks about them, Giannis potentially becoming available, and they might make a push for Giannis or Jaylen Brown, whatnot. Personally, I'd probably stay away from those guys, if I'm being honest. Giannis, be kind of hard to say no to Giannis if you could realistically get him. But outside of Giannis, Jaylen Brown, personally, I'd prefer them stay away from. But I'd rather see them stay the course, right? There's clear needs that stand out with this team. Center position, right? Whether it's a backup center, starting center, or both. I think you need to solve your wing depth and get more two-way wings one way or another. I mean, the only guy you really have is Harrison Barnes as far as like a legit 3-and-D guy, right? Carter Bryant should be that guy, but we haven't seen him play yet. What does his three-point shot translate to? What does the defense translate to? Champagnie, he offensively has been really good, but he can be a little streaky and inconsistent, right? Like, again, so if you can bring in a couple more guys, a couple vets, because you have so much young core and talent. I don't hate the idea of like, hey, let's bring in a couple veterans here. Let's get a couple, and I'm not talking about necessarily like 35-year-olds or anything like that. I mean, it could be 26, 27-year-olds, right? Like, Gary Harris would be great. Bring in a Gary Harris. Let Gary Harris come and be a rotation piece for you. Right? A legit 3-and-D veteran player. Still young enough to where he could be a piece if it works out for a couple seasons. Right? Maybe go make a trade or pull off a move, right? Like, can you get an Andrew Wiggins? Perfect, right? Like, there's to me, there's clear needs. You need to solve your forward positions, right? Probably more 4 than 3 at this point, because again, you got Carter Bryant, you got Harrison Barnes who could play, you got Julian Champagnie, so I think you might be fine in that regard. You could always move Castle there if you needed to. So I think the 3 is fine. It's the 4 you probably need to work on. Jeremy Sohan, defensively, fantastic. Offensively is a liability. I don't think he can be your starter right now until he actually improves on his 3-point shooting. I just don't like him as your starter, especially with the team the way that it currently is. Like, you'd have no shooting. Because again, Stephon Castle, not saying he can't improve and get better. He absolutely can. Maybe he becomes a 37% 3-point shooter next year. Who knows? But from we only know what we know from last year. So what we know from last year is he's a guy that was not great shooting the 3 ball. So he's not great shooting the 3 ball. You have a De'Aaron Fox who is not great shooting the 3 ball and can be streaky. Victor Wembanyama can be incredibly streaky. And yeah, you go with maybe Harrison Barnes, and then he gives you, if he can replicate what he did last year, 40% from 3-point range. But let's say it is Carter Bryant. He might not be 40% as a rookie in year 1. And then you're going to slot in Jeremy Sohan, who can't shoot the 3 ball. It's just like, where's the floor spacing coming from? That's a big concern that I would have doing that. So do think you need to solve the 4 position, probably more than anybody. So like the backup big in the 4 spot, I think are something that you really need to solve. However, I also don't hate the idea of Wemby. I've talked about this before. I don't hate the idea of making Wemby your 4. He wants to take 8 threes a game anyway. He wants to be more Kevin Durant than Hakeem anyway. It doesn't mean Wemby can't play the 5 at times, right? Like, but I don't hate the idea of like, let's go slide Wemby to the 4, let him be the help defender, let him be the floor spacer, let him play the game the way he wants to play it, and then go get that interior center. Can you get that big man? Can you go maybe make a trade for a Walker Kessler or something like that? Give you just the 2 best, interior defenders in all of basketball, the 2 best rim protectors in all of basketball, 2 guys that could be competing with each other for defensive player of the year for the next 5 years, right? Like, I don't think that would be a bad thing to have. And now Wemby, Wemby gets to kind of evolve and mold. And I know, like, anytime I've talked about, Wemby potentially playing the 4, I'll get, comments from people that are like, oh, we've seen him play with Rudy Gobert and Zach Collins and all that stuff. It's like, there's a very big difference between like Rudy Gobert, who can't score outside of 5 feet and, is basically just a paint clogger, and a guy that actually, has a little bit of skill and can pick and pop, right? Same thing with like Zach Collins. He was like unplayably bad for the Spurs. He was actually really good for the Bulls, which is crazy, right? But also, again, like, if you're taking the time to develop, like, let's say you get a Walker Kessler, you have time to make that work, right? Because he's young enough to kind of fit in the youthful timeline, fit in the type of role that you want him to, right? Like, it's just how much of it is Wemby's just not used to playing alongside multiple big men, and how much is it that just it was Rudy Gobert, who again can't score outside of 5 feet, and and then Zach Collins, who was unplayably bad. If you go get like a real center, it's very possible that it could work well. I don't hate that idea. That otherwise, do you maybe go look at like a Yabuswale? Naz Reid would have been beautiful. I would have loved to get Naz Reid, but he just recently signed a new contract with the Minnesota Timberwolves, so it's like that's a bummer. But again, like I want to see this team get a couple vets, like quality vets, right? I want to see this team bring in forwards. I think that last thing they need is guards. You need size. Spurs need to start looking to add some real size. You need even Wemby, right? As much as I like Wemby. Now look, supposedly he's gained some weight, gained like 10, 15 pounds. That's great. I hope so, because he could use a little more, meat on the bones, right? Especially banging with the big boys in the Western Conference. You think of all the centers in the Western Conference and how big the Western Conference is as far as center-wise goes and just interior size and all that. That's another reason I kind of like the idea of bringing in a center, right? So Wemby doesn't have to do that. Could you imagine Wemby having to bang with Jokic in the playoffs for 7 games? Right? Like, I want Wemby to make it out of that playoffs, right? Like, make it out of that round, right? So I look at that and I'm like, maybe that would be the best route. But again, you need upgrade some of your bench depth, get some veterans that give you some hopefully productive. Like, I don't want just veteran. Like, I don't want a Udonis Haslem type where it's just like he's just sitting at the end of the bench for nothing, right? Like, I want them to be productive. Like, Chris Paul was productive last year. Harrison Barnes was productive last year. I'd love to keep Harrison Barnes. We've talked very heavily about, hey, I think that the Spurs should keep Harrison Barnes, right? Like, those kind of things. But again, get some vets, a couple vets that can come in and play. Again, not saying it has to be a 35, 36-year-old vet. Just, somebody 27 to 32 in that range, then come in, play a role, be bench role, or even start in a pinch while Carter Bryant's kind of getting comfortable and coming into his own. I have a couple guys off the bench. I think you need to trade Devin Vassell. It's another big thing that I think the Spurs need to look to do. You need to solve your center position. Backup, bare minimum, you need at least a backup, ideally 2, right? Get that clear cut, backup, and then maybe even like a third center for, if Wemby gets the night off or that center gets the night off or whatever. So you're not just like, oh, Wemby's our only center tonight, right? Those are kind of the things that I want to solve. And then the wing depth. Can you get 2 or 3 wings that can come in, they can play a role, right? And just whether it's via trade, whether it's signing in free agency, however the Spurs can approach it, it's what I want to see them do. I really do. I think that I don't know if they're, I don't want to never say never. I don't know if they're going to be a contender this year. My money would be that they're not going to be, for being honest. Because again, it is a very young team that is, what does Dylan Harper look like? What does Castle look like? What does De'Aaron Fox look like? What does Wemby look like? But in the same breath, I do think that there is a version where it's possible. Like, maybe you could stumble into the conference finals somehow. What does Wemby look like in year 3? Does he clearly move in a top 5 in the league? If he does, maybe you're there, right? With him and then De'Aaron Fox. Can De'Aaron Fox kind of attribute to winning? What does Castle look like in year 2? What does Dylan Harper look like in year 1? What does Carter Bryant look like in year 1? Right? What did some of these guys look like, depending on how these guys look and shape up? And then again, what do you do in free agency and trades? All these things could matter and make an impact. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot as we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.